Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Hope you all are doing very well. For any of you guys that might be new here, my name is Sophia and I make bookish content mainly related to literary fiction and mystery books. But today's video is all about my favorite books of the year with one honorable mention as well. And so I'm just so excited to talk about all the books that have brought me so much joy this year. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get started. So I will be chatting about my 5 favorite books of the year and also one honorable mention, which isn't actually my 6th favorite book of the year, but just a book that surprised me by how much I liked it. And going forward, I might take that into more account when I pick out books I'm going to read. So overall, this reading year was kind of meh, if I'm going to be honest. There were some great hits, which I'm definitely going to talk about, but I felt like this reading year was very fluky. I was either having my best reading year I've ever had or months on end where I just couldn't find a book that I really resonated with and liked. So ultimately, it just felt right to have 5 favorite books and highlight the best of the best rather than making a very long list of books that I just felt meh about. But starting off with my honorable mention, we have Lies and Weddings by Kevin Kwan. So this book comes to us from the very popular author Kevin Kwan, who wrote the Crazy Rich Asian series. And this book is in that vein, but a little bit different in a few ways that I'll chat about. This book follows a man named Rufus. He has grown up in an extremely wealthy family called the Gresham family. However, recently his family has fallen upon hard times, and in fact, he realizes that they are in extreme debt. So his mother, who loves to meddle in everything, decides that the way to get the family out of debt is to pair off the very eligible bachelor Rufus with a very wealthy lady. And so starts a over-the-top Gossip Girl meets Cinderella vibe that is told in a series of parts that each take place at different weddings that he goes to. But Rufus's conflict is that he has always wanted to marry for love, and he's always been in love with Eden, who is the daughter of a doctor who lived on the Gresham estate when he was growing up. It's kind of a friends to lovers trope, but of course, through all of the other extenuating circumstances, their romance is not going to be as easy as Rufus would like. This book is full of glitz and glamour, over the topness, if that's a word, rompy, fast-paced, ridiculous love plots. But I read this in the summer and it was just the most absorptive, fun summer read. It kept me guessing through the whole time. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So even though this doesn't fit into my typical literary fiction or mystery genres that I like to read, I feel like sometimes I need to branch out and read other things that sometimes are going to be hits, even if they're not what I typically read. I ended up giving this book I think 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was just so much fun. So kicking off my 5th favorite book of the year was God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This is my 2nd book that I've read from this author, the first being Long Bright River. Both are kind of similar in that they're literary mysteries, I would say, but they definitely take place in very different timelines and follow very different people. So this is set in the 1970s in a summer camp in the Adirondacks, and I am 2 for 2 for loving summer camp thrillers. I'll put the other one on the screen that I really enjoyed, but it just felt very nostalgic as we started out. And the mystery in this novel is that a 13-year-old girl goes missing, but she's not just any 13-year-old girl. She is the daughter of the owners of the summer camp, who are extremely wealthy. Not only that, their first child, Bear, who's an 8-year-old boy, has been missing for several years. So the fact that 2 children from the same family have now gone missing, and it is a very privileged family, is starting to kind of cast suspicion on a number of different people. This felt very much like a thriller meets family drama. There's a lot in here about the nuances of the wealthy Van Lore family and also how some of the less privileged people surrounding the summer camp, either workers at the summer camp or in the area where they live, might not have the most favorable outlook on this family. And so I think building up the tensions within those different groups, as well as looking at different clues to solving this mystery, really made this a very well-rounded story. This was very compulsively readable. I kept thinking that I had figured out what was happening, but I ended up not to have figured it out any of the times until the very end when the mystery is revealed. And ultimately, it was just a fantastic summer thriller that I thoroughly enjoyed. Next up is The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese. This is another chunker of a book. I feel like all the books I've mentioned are on the longer side, but this is I would say, historical fiction novel that's a little bit difficult to recap because it is so lengthy. But basically, it's a family saga that goes over about 70-ish years. And it starts out with a woman in the 1900s who lives in the Kerala region of India. And she is being forced to marry a man that she does not want to marry. And you kind of go on from there, how the different members in the family unfold and the relationships between the different members. But one thing that really sticks out about this family is that through the years, they have been through so much tragedy, so much loss and grief. And the way that this grief shapes them throughout the years is just very heartbreaking, but also just really well done. One of the main themes in this book is medicine and being a physician, because Abraham Verghese is actually a physician. And because of a lot of the death and grief that has affected this family, there's also a look into the medical issues that they faced. And so I thought that that was also really well done. Despite the multiple pages of tragedy and loss, this book is filled with a lot of hope and just absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous writing. It's made me certainly want to pick up Abraham Verghese's first book, Cutting for Stone, which I have currently on my TBR shelf. It's just so well written and so well done. Coming in at number 3, we have Ordinary Human Failings, which is a superstar from my Vlogmas series. I read this because it was a 5-star prediction of the year for a couple of reasons. One, I seem to not be able to find an Irish author that I don't like their work, and Megan Nolan is an Irish author. Second of all, I thought the plot sounded super interesting, and so I thought that it was just going to be one for me, and it turned out to be one of my favorites of the year. So this is about a man named Tom Hargraves, who is a very cutthroat reporter. He wants the story, he wants the scoop, and he doesn't care if it's true, and he doesn't care who he hurts in the process. And he happens upon this story about a young girl who goes missing and is ultimately murdered, which is not a spoiler, from a South London housing project. And this family called the Greens, who came to London from Ireland, is very much at the center of this investigation. And so he goes there and tries to figure it all out, unveil all of the secrets. And ultimately, this book takes a little bit more of a family saga look into the crime. It's not as much of a mystery novel, but you look at the multiple members of the Green family to see how their family has been shaped over the years, to see how a lot of the members of the family have really fallen so far from where they want to be in life. And so there's 3 different parts, each part at a different member of the Green family. But then in the background, you also have this meddling Tom Hargraves who wants to make everybody pay, and he wants to make a name for himself. Well, I did ultimately think that this was going to be more of a detective novel than it ended up being. I felt so much in love for these characters, even if they made decisions that were really tough to get behind, even if they did things that were really damaging. The way that they were humanized throughout the book, at least some of them were humanized throughout the book, really kept me invested. This is quite a short novel, but just really well done. As I'm filming this, I'm realizing that so many of these books have to do with family drama and family sagas, because the next favorite, my second favorite book of the year, is The Bee Sting by Paul Murray. This is another more than 600-page family drama that follows the Barnes family. You kind of pick up their story in slightly after the 2008 recession, and their family used to be very wealthy as the father figure, Dickie, owned a car shop that was very profitable. However, based on some sketchy decisions that he made and also the financial recession, their family comes upon some harder times, and you dive into each of the different family members' stories, what each of them are doing during this challenging time for the family. So Dickie, you get his part. Then you also get PJ, who is the most heartwarming character. He's a 12-year-old boy who loves video games, but he's also very naive and makes some very questionable decisions. Cass, who's a teenage girl who is very concerned about failing her exams and boys. And finally, Imelda, who I think is the star of this book. She's a very beautiful woman who grew up in a very poor place and ultimately, through a series of events, became married to Dickie. And she's just so frustrated with where she is in her life and the fact that she can't have the things that she wants, and that so much has been taken from her throughout her life. And the novel actually gets its name from this event that happens at Dickie and Imelda's wedding, where a bee gets under Imelda's veil and kind of like makes the whole situation a little tragic. And so one of the questions that is asked in this book is, can a single bee, not similar to like the butterfly effect, but can a single bee, can a single event change everything forever? I cried my eyes out while listening to this book. I listened to it on audio, and I don't usually cry when I read, but it was just absolutely fantastic. I loved it. If you're a long book lover, if you're a family drama lover, I think you'll really enjoy this as well. There was a review of this book on the New York Times that I think just summed it up perfectly. It said, through the Barnes' countless personal dramas, Murray explores humanity's endless contradictions. How brutal and beautiful life is, how broken and also full of potential, how endlessly fraught and persistently promising. Whether or not we can ever truly change our course, the hapless Barneses will keep you hoping even after you turn the novel's last page. And I very much agree with that. I fell for these characters. They felt like real people to me. And finally, my absolute favorite book of the year was James by Percival Everett. I do have a full reading vlog of this one. If you want to see my experience reading it, I will link it up in the cards. But this is a reimagining, I would say, of Huckleberry Finn, the famous Mark Twain novel. And that story is about a boy named Huck and a slave named Jim who escape this plantation together. But this is Jim's story, hence the title James. In The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Jim is described as very unaware and good-natured, but this novel makes him his own person, a very intelligent, aware, literate man who is desperately trying to get out of a bad situation to save his family. One of the themes that I loved so much in here was how James explored language. He loves reading about philosophers and thinking about slavery and some of the bigger questions in life. And obviously, people knowing that he's able to read and he's able to understand things makes him dangerous. And so that is not something that he wants white people to know about him. And so he keeps that very quiet. And actually, throughout this book, in many instances, you see how his literacy and how language is very dangerous for him. But I loved that journey of him just so desperately wanting to express himself. So I watched the whole National Book Award ceremony, and I was hoping so dearly that this book won, and it did. So this was very well deserving, an absolutely fantastic book, and I do think it fully stands on itself from the initial novel. This is just a separate story that takes inspiration from that novel, but is really its own story and its own character in itself. So with that, those are my favorite books of the year. I would love to know what books you enjoyed this year. What were some of your favorites? Did you enjoy any of the books that I mentioned in this video? And with that, I will see you back with another video very soon. Bye.